Hello. Today I want to talk about how our society is obsessed with wealth generation. So we could think of wealth generation as being built in two methods. One would be a wealth now approach, and the other would be a wealth later approach, if you will. So the wealth now approach is basically to borrow. And so you are actually, in effect, borrowing wealth from the future, wealth that has not been established yet, in order to create future wealth. And when the infrastructure is in place, everything in that way works pretty well. I mean, we've kind of established that because we are the wealthiest culture in history. Of course, it's not just because of our economics, there's a lot of other factors involved, but certainly it is extremely hard to argue that our method of borrowing against the future does not result in a great deal of wealth. Now, the future wealth approach is basically saving and working and saving and spending very little. And of course, we're very impatient to have to go through such a means. We don't like going through that kind of a wealth gathering method because we want our wealth now. And the simple fact is there's a dynamic that emerges when people are they're excited because they're going to get their wealth now. It's not going to be later. It's coming right now, and that gives energy to the whole wealth building process. So there's a sense in which I don't want to, that's a lot shakier than I thought it would be. I don't want to deride that too much. I don't want to make it out as if we have to completely abandon debt mechanisms. But I do want to point out that when you borrow against the future, you are not only, first of all, you have to have a very strong infrastructure for that to be able to happen in the first place. Secondly, that infrastructure, if it is not as strong as it could be, that i.e. if you've been reinvesting wealth instead of building wealth into a stronger and stronger social infrastructure, into a cultural infrastructure. Notice I'm saying not just your business, but the way the culture itself runs. If you're putting all your wealth in personal wealth building investments, then you are in fact still borrowing against debt, and the debt is a debt of inequality. Everybody in this country who is able to work, or at least, how should I say this? Not every individual, I'm not measuring it by that way, but I am saying that the intent of the society is that everyone is a part of the society, that everyone is trying to build wealth. And when a very few end up with most of that, the fruits of that labor, regardless of what role they played. Like, a business is made up of, many people, but only a small fraction of those people get the full brunt of the wealth generated by the business itself. So that means that even though everyone is putting in labor, they don't divide that evenly. And of course, there's reasons for that. But I'm pointing this out. I'm not trying to make a devastating critique, certainly not a Marxist or communist or socialist critique. I'm pointing out a simple fact of human nature, and it is a fact that is why socialism and Marxism functions it doesn't function, but the reason it's appealing, which is, hey, I spent just as much time, maybe even more, than the guy in the head office, certainly more than the guys who invested in the company and on the stock market, and I'm getting hardly any of the profits. I can barely maybe you're in the position where you can't get into a better job for whatever reason. Maybe it's the insurance, maybe it's lack of skills, lack of training, and it could be psychological. You may not believe you can get yourself into a better position, which is unfortunate. It's like, how do you convince a person that they can grow themselves beyond the position in which they're stuck? And can you really blame that person for not understanding that they can be more? All of that to say, that's precisely the kind of place that truly investing in the present, truly building a stable infrastructure would do. So, okay, fine. You can get away with gaining more wealth at the time, but as soon as something, say, a virus, or let's say another sun flare happens, as it did in the 1900s, that is basically an EMP that can fry all the electronics in North America. If your infrastructure, if your social infrastructure is not built up in such a situation, meaning everyone is capable of fending for themselves, or at least there's an infrastructure in place to help people fend for themselves, then the whole society is going to devolve in chaos. And you can say, not my problem, wasn't my fault, I was busy making millions. Okay, but you were borrowing against the future instead of developing a wealth that could be shared, instead of investing your wealth in the society. It truly is an investment. That's the way to think about it. So this whole talk is about changing the paradigm from businesses trying to build their wealth just to share amongst a select few who probably already have tremendous wealth. It is about, no, it is of more benefit to me to be the beneficiary of the society than to make an extra million or to compound that. I mean, once you get above a certain degree of wealth, the only thing wealth is good for is luxury. Almost anybody in America, at least, can afford a vacation. They just can't afford the expensive, all expenses, or all frills included vacation. So it's merely a luxury level. Is mere luxury and status that goes with it, and the status of tearing down a $6 million home so that you can build an $8 million home that is on the $10 million plot of land in an expensive neighborhood. Is that really is that status worth it? Or would you rather earn the status of having built an enormously stable social structure where everyone is capable of moving up lines, are fully capable of investing themselves and reaching their complete and total capabilities, potentials. The thing is the people who are making millions and billions, though they don't have the character perhaps of Superman, there is a sense in which they have the concentrated wealth of Superman, the power of Superman through their concentration of power, so to speak, something like that. Analogous, by analogy. So that's my challenge, I suppose. I don't think I said it very well, but always banking wealth on some future payoff instead of making society and the culture and every other economical institution as stable as possible. I would argue that is where we need to change our focus. We need to encourage those who have the power to do so.